At 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday night in October, Diane Carter's phone lit up on the nightstand. A LinkedIn notification. A connection request from a woman she had never heard of, with a note attached. "I need to speak with you. It is about your husband. I am not your enemy." Diane sat up in bed and read the message 3 times. Then she accepted the connection. Her phone rang 40 seconds later. The woman's name was Yvonne Price. She was 38 years old. She was a dental hygienist in Atlanta, and for the past 25 months, she had been in a relationship with a man named Marcus Carter, a man who had told her from the very first week that he was separated and the divorce was nearly final. Diane Carter had been married to Marcus Carter for 17 years. The divorce was not nearly final. The divorce had never been filed. There was no separation. There was no paperwork pending. There was only Marcus, working 2 lives with the same easy smile, the same practiced warmth, the same set of promises, and Yvonne, who had believed every word, right up until the moment she didn't. Yvonne spoke for 40 minutes. Then she said, "I am sending you everything. Every message, every receipt, every photograph, every voice memo. You deserve to know the truth. I'm sorry it took me this long to find it." The folder arrived at 12:43 a.m. 847 screenshots, 41 photographs, 11 receipts, 1 voice memo. Diane did not sleep that night. She did not need to. She had work to do. The other woman did not fight for him. She did not call Diane to gloat. She did not disappear quietly and let the lie continue. The moment Yvonne Price found out the truth, she picked up the phone and she burned it all down. And Diane Carter, a woman who had spent 17 years building a life with a man she believed she knew, sat in her reading chair until 4 a.m. and read every single word. Stay with me, because what Diane did with that folder changed everything. Subscribe to Shattered Crown Stories TV, a new story every single day. Justice is always served here.
Diane Carter had been a principal for 11 years. She was at her desk by 7 every morning, not because the contract required it, but because the school ran better when she was already there before the day started. She had learned that early in her career and never unlearned it. The house she drove home to every evening had been her grandmother's. Diane had inherited it at 31, 2 years before she married Marcus. She had repainted every room, replaced the kitchen cabinets, put in new floors in the hallway. By the time Marcus moved in, it was fully hers. She had the documentation to prove it. Her attorney had suggested she keep it. Good practice, he said, not a prediction. Marcus Carter was a regional sales director for a logistics company. He was charming in the way that men are charming when they have spent years being rewarded for it. Easy with names, easy with eye contact, easy with the particular warmth that makes people feel chosen. Diane had loved that about him at the beginning. She had also, over 17 years, quietly noted that the warmth was consistent regardless of who it was directed at. It was a skill, not a feeling. Their son Damon had graduated 2 years ago. He was 23 now, working his first real job in Charlotte, calling on Sundays. He had his mother's eyes and his father's jawline, and the particular self-possession of a young man who had grown up watching a composed woman run a household without drama. He had been born before they married, which Diane had always considered beside the point. They were theirs. That was the only number that mattered. From the outside, the Carters were a solid family. 17 years, a house with good bones, a son who had turned out well, a husband with a good job, and a wife who ran a school. From the inside, Diane had been quietly noting for 3 years that Marcus was somewhere else, even when he was in the room. She had not named it yet. She was still in the stage of gathering information before drawing conclusions. She was good at that. She had been doing it her whole career. Diane Carter has been quietly gathering information for 3 years. She just got all of it. Subscribe right now, because a woman like this does not move until she is ready, and she is almost ready. Marcus had met Yvonne Price at his dental office 25 months ago. She had been cleaning his teeth. He had been charming. That was how it started. He told her on the third visit that he was going through a separation. His wife, they were technically still married on paper, he said, but they had been living separately for months. The house was complicated. He was staying at his brother's place while they worked out the details. The divorce was in process. These things took time. None of this was true. Marcus lived at home with Diane every night except Tuesday and Thursday, when he had what Diane understood to be late client dinners, and occasional Saturday afternoons when he played golf with clients. These were real fixtures of his schedule. He had used them for years before Yvonne, and they gave him a framework that Diane had long since stopped questioning. Yvonne was not a careless woman. She had Googled Marcus Carter in the early weeks. His was a common name, 47 results, none of them him. He had no personal social media. His LinkedIn was professional, headshot, job title, work history, clean. She had checked and found nothing because there was nothing to find from the outside. He had made sure of that. For 25 months, Marcus maintained 2 lives with the precision of a man who had thought through every variable. 2 colleagues at work knew and covered for him when needed. He gave Yvonne a promise ring at month 14 and told her the divorce was in mediation. He told her his mother was old-fashioned and he wanted to wait until it was final before introducing them. He told her 30 more days, and then 30 more days, and then 30 more days after that. Yvonne believed him because he was specific. Vague men lie loosely. Marcus lied in complete sentences with supporting details and consistent timelines. That is the harder kind to catch.
It was Yvonne's coworker Tasha who found it. Yvonne had mentioned Marcus's name at lunch. She did not often talk about him at work, but she had that day, something small, and Tasha had gone home that evening and searched his name in image results, the way cautious women sometimes do for their friends. The photograph had been posted 6 months ago by Marcus's company on their awards night account. It showed Marcus in a tuxedo, his arm around a woman in a navy dress, both of them smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Celebrating another outstanding year with my rock." The woman in the navy dress was Diane Carter. The company had tagged Marcus's LinkedIn profile. The algorithm had served it up to Tasha in image results because it was recent and active. Tasha showed Yvonne over the phone that evening. Yvonne was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I've seen that name once on an insurance document in his car. I thought it was a client." She called Marcus immediately. He denied it with the fluency of a man who had rehearsed denial the way other men rehearse presentations. It was old, he said. They were technically still married on paper. Diane knew about the arrangement. It was complicated, but it was not what it looked like. "Call her right now," Yvonne said. "Call your wife and put her on speaker." The line went quiet for 4 seconds. Then Marcus said he couldn't do that right now. "Then we're done," Yvonne said, and she hung up. She sat in her apartment for 48 hours. She did not call Marcus back. He called 11 times. She did not answer once. She was not sitting still. She was deciding. Yvonne Price did not cry for long. She had cried the first night, sitting on her bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, the kind of crying that comes from the particular humiliation of understanding that the most specific details of a lie are also its most deliberate parts. Every 60 more days, every conversation about where they would live when it was final, every time he had said, "I love you" on the phone with the easy fluency of a man who meant it for the duration of the call. By the second morning, she was done crying and ready to think. She was a dental hygienist. Her entire professional life was built on precision, the right angle, the right pressure, the right sequence, nothing rushed, nothing skipped. She applied the same discipline now. She did not call Marcus. He had called 11 times. She let every call go to voicemail and did not listen to the messages. There was nothing he could say that would change what the photograph had already told her. The only question left was what she was going to do about it. She thought about Diane Carter, a woman she had never met, who did not know Yvonne existed,
who had spent 17 years building a life with a man who had spent the last 25 months building a second one. That woman deserved to know. Yvonne was not doing this for satisfaction. She was doing it because it was the right thing, and because she had spent 48 hours understanding that protecting Marcus at Diane's expense was not something she was willing to do for a single day longer. Everything she sent was hers. That was the first thing she established clearly in her own mind before she started. She was not going to access anything she was not entitled to. She was going to send exactly what she owned, the record of her own relationship, documented from her own phone, her own apartment, her own memory. She started with the messages. 25 months of text conversations. She scrolled to the beginning, took screenshots in sequence, named each file by date. It took 3 hours, 847 screenshots. Then the photographs. Marcus had given her cards for her birthday, for Valentine's Day, for the 6-month mark of what he called their relationship. She had kept all of them in a box on her closet shelf. She was organized by nature. She photographed each card, front and back. She photographed the promise ring in its box, closed, then open. She photographed the 2 restaurant receipts she had saved from particularly memorable dinners. Marcus always paid cash, but she had kept the receipts for her own records without thinking much about it. Now it made sense. She found the voice memo in her saved files. 6 weeks ago, a Tuesday evening, Marcus calling to say he was on his way. "Hey, it's me. Just leaving the office. I'll be there by 6. I love you." 22 seconds. She listened to it once. Then she added it to the folder. She compressed everything into a single file, named it simply The Truth. She found Diane Carter on LinkedIn in 4 minutes. Principal, Benjamin E. Mays High School, Atlanta. The profile photo. A black woman in professional clothing, natural hair in a neat bun, the composed expression of a woman who ran things. Yvonne wrote the connection request note 3 times before she sent it. The final version: "I need to speak with you. It is about your husband. I am not your enemy." She sent it at 11:32 p.m. and watched the screen. Diane accepted at 11:46 p.m. Yvonne called immediately. She told Diane everything in order as it had happened, from the first dental appointment, to the separated story, to the promise ring, to the 60 more days pattern, to Tasha and the photograph, to the speakerphone moment that Marcus had not been able to meet. She spoke for 40 minutes, and she did not editorialize. She stated facts in sequence. She answered every question Diane asked. She did not cry. At the end, Diane said, "How long?" 25 months, Yvonne said. A silence. "I'm going to send you everything I have," Yvonne said. "It's all mine. My messages, my photographs, receipts from my own evenings. I want you to have the full picture. You deserve that." "Send it," Diane said. The folder arrived at 12:43 a.m. Yvonne then opened her phone and blocked Marcus Carter on every channel, texts, calls, email, every social platform he had ever contacted her on. She did not write a goodbye message. There was nothing left to say to him. She had already said everything that mattered to the person who needed to hear it. She went to bed at 1 a.m. and slept cleanly for the first 48 hours.
The folder downloaded in 40 seconds. Diane carried her phone to the reading chair in the corner of the living room, the wide armchair that had been her grandmother's, reupholstered twice but never replaced. She sat with her legs folded under her the way she had since she was a girl, pulled the reading lamp on, and opened the first file. She read in the order Yvonne had organized them, chronological, month 1 to month 25. The screenshots were dated and labeled. The first messages were careful, formal, the rhythm of 2 people circling each other. By month 3, they were easy and familiar. By month 6, there were photographs, restaurants, a day trip somewhere Diane didn't recognize, Yvonne at a table with wine, Marcus's hand visible at the edge of the frame.
She paused on that photograph for a long time. His hand, the wedding ring clearly visible on his finger. He had not taken it off. He had not even bothered to take it off. She set the phone down on the chair arm for a moment, looked at the ceiling. Then she picked it back up. She was going to read it all, every word, every month. She owed herself the complete picture before she did anything else. The promise ring photograph was in the 43rd file. She stared at it for a while. She thought about what month 14 looked like from her end. She had been planning a weekend trip to Savannah that she and Marcus had never taken. He had said he was too busy with the quarter-end push at work. She had rebooked twice and eventually let it go. Month 14, Marcus had given another woman a promise ring. She kept reading. The receipts were careful and specific. Restaurants she had never heard of, on dates she recognized, the Tuesday and Thursday evenings, the Saturday afternoons. She pulled up the calendar app on her phone and cross-referenced 3 dates. They matched with the precision of a ledger. Client dinners at restaurants 4 miles from Yvonne's apartment address, which Diane now had because it was on the folder's cover note. The voice memo was the last file in the folder. She pressed play. Marcus's voice, easy, warm, the voice she had heard every day for 17 years. "Hey, it's me. Just leaving the office. I'll be there by 6. I love you." 22 seconds. She played it once, then she closed the file and set the phone face down on the arm of the chair. She sat in the reading chair until 4 a.m., not moving, not crying, thinking. She had everything she needed to understand what Marcus was. Now she needed everything she needed to dismantle it properly. She stayed home Sunday. She told Marcus she had a headache and needed the day. He accepted this without follow-up, the way he accepted most things that required no particular effort from him. She was at her desk by 7 on Monday. She had showered, dressed, made coffee, and driven to school in the same sequence she followed every morning. Her assistant principal noticed nothing different. Her secretary noticed nothing different. The 2 ninth graders she counseled through a hallway dispute at 8:15 noticed nothing different. She was a principal. She had spent 20 years being the composed adult in every room. She knew how to carry something privately while handling everything publicly. It was not a skill she was glad to need today, but she had it, and she used it. Marcus texted at noon. "Long day. Grabbing dinner with the Hendricks account tonight. Don't wait up." She read the message. She typed back, "Okay." She needed 2 more days. She was not going to confront him on emotion. She was going to confront him on evidence, with everything in order when she was ready. That was how she handled every serious situation. This one was no different, except that it was the most serious situation of her life. She drove home that evening, made dinner, sat across the kitchen table from Marcus while he talked about the Hendricks account, and said the appropriate words at the appropriate moments. He did not notice anything. He never had. That was the last ordinary evening they would have. On the 3rd day, Diane called Marcus's company. She used her maiden name. Professionally, she had always been Diane Webb. Her teaching certificate, her principal's license, her school email, all in the name she had before Marcus. She had kept it for professional continuity. Her attorney had mentioned once, years ago, that it was also practical. She had filed that away without knowing she would ever need it. She called the HR department and told the coordinator she was following up on a request Marcus Carter had made regarding his expense reports for the past 24 months. She implied it was for a financial review he had initiated. The coordinator assumed she was his assistant. She had his reports emailed to her work address within 4 hours. She opened them at her desk with her office door closed. The Tuesday and Thursday client dinners were logged with restaurant names and addresses. She cross-referenced 3 of them against the address she had for Yvonne's apartment. The closest was 0.8 miles away. None were near any of the client venues listed on the report's official purpose lines. The Saturday golf days showed a club membership charge, a club she had never heard Marcus mention in 17 years. She looked it up. It was 3 miles from Yvonne's apartment. She closed the expense reports. She had what she needed. She called her personal attorney on the 4th day. Not a divorce attorney, not yet. Robert Hines had handled her grandmother's estate and the house transfer. He knew the property history better than anyone. "The house is yours," he said, before she finished explaining. "Inherited before the marriage, documented, never commingled into a joint asset. In Georgia, that is separate property. It is not subject to equitable distribution, regardless of what else happens." "What about his pension?" Diane said. "Contributions made during the marriage are marital property," Robert said, "subject to split." "How long has he been at the company?" 14 years with this employer. Then a significant portion is marital. You will want a QDRO, a Qualified Domestic Relations Order, to formalize the division when you file. I can refer you to a divorce attorney with strong asset litigation experience. Do not make any financial moves yet. Do not touch the joint accounts. Let me make the referral first and let her advise you on sequencing. "How soon can you make the referral?" Diane said. "I'll send you her contact information this afternoon," Robert said. "Thank you," Diane said, and she went back to work for the rest of the day. She called Damon that Thursday evening, after Marcus had left for what he said was a work dinner. Damon answered on the second ring. "Mom," he said. He heard something in the single syllable of her greeting. He was his mother's son. "I need to tell you something," Diane said. "It is not an emergency. You are not in danger. But I need you to know, and I need you to know before I handle it, because you deserve that." "Tell me," Damon said. She told him. Not everything, not the 847 screenshots, not the voice memo, but the shape of it. "Your father has been seeing someone else for over 2 years. I found out 3 days ago. I have verified it. I'm speaking to an attorney. I am handling it. I wanted you to hear it from me." Damon was quiet for a long moment. "Are you okay?" he said. "I will be, yes." "I'm coming home," Damon said. "You don't have to come this weekend." "I know I don't have to," Damon said. "I'm coming." He drove up Saturday morning. She met him at the door, and they stood in the hallway of her grandmother's house, and he held on for a long time without saying anything. He had always known when words were not the right tool. She appreciated that more than she could say. Marcus came home at 6:30 on Saturday evening. He had texted at 5 to say he was leaving the office. Diane was at the kitchen table. Her laptop was open to the folder. Beside it, stacked neatly, were 12 printed pages. She had selected them over 2 days. The screenshots that covered the promise ring conversation, the voice memo transcript, 3 dated expense report lines cross-referenced with restaurant addresses, and the LinkedIn company photo with its caption. She had made 2 cups of tea. One was in front of her. One was on Marcus's side of the table. Marcus came through the door with the easy looseness of a man who believed he was walking into an ordinary Saturday evening. He set his keys on the counter. He looked at the Diane at the table. He looked at the laptop. He looked at the stack of pages. He sat down slowly. "What is this?" Marcus said. "Sit down and I'll tell you," Diane said. He was already sitting. She said it anyway. Diane told Marcus what she knew the same way she told parents difficult things about their children, clearly, without softening, without raising her voice, in complete sentences. She told Marcus she knew about Yvonne Price. She told Marcus she knew about 25 months. She told Marcus she knew about the promise ring, the Tuesday and Thursday evenings, the expense reports, the golf club 3 miles from Yvonne's apartment, and the voice memo from 6 weeks ago. Marcus said it was not what it looked like. Diane placed the first page in front of him, the screenshot of the promise ring conversation, month 14. Marcus said it had been a mistake and it was over. Diane placed the second page in front of him, the expense report lines from the last 3 months, not over. Marcus said he could explain. Diane placed the third page in front of him, the voice memo transcript, 6 weeks ago. Marcus said he loved her and he did not want to lose his family. Diane looked at him for a long moment. "You did not lose your family," Diane said. "You spent 25 months choosing something else over your family, with full information every single time. Those are not the same thing." She did not wait for him to respond. She let the sentence stand exactly as it was. They sat in the kitchen for a long time after that. Marcus tried twice more. He said he needed her to understand where he had been mentally. He said the marriage had felt distant and he should have come to her instead of... Diane let him finish the sentence without interrupting. When he was done, she did not respond to it. She simply waited, and the silence after his explanation was more complete than any argument could have been. Finally, Marcus said, "What do you want me to do?" Diane stood up from the table. "I want you to call the Marriott on Peachtree and book a room, and I want you to be in it by 9 o'clock tonight." She walked out of the kitchen. Behind her, she heard Marcus sit at the table for another 20 minutes. She heard him pick up his phone. She heard him make the call. He left at 8:45. He left his wedding ring on the kitchen counter beside the coffee maker. She did not move it. She was not ready to decide what to do with it yet, but she noted its absence from his hand with the same precise attention she had given to everything else. The Marriott room was clean and anonymous, and exactly the right size for a man who had just been removed from his own life. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands. The left hand, where the ring had been, felt different. Not lighter exactly, but specific in its absence, the way a familiar weight becomes noticeable only when it is gone. He had built the last 25 months on the assumption that he would be the one to control the timing. He would choose when to leave, how to leave, what to take. He had a date in his mind, not circled anywhere, not written down, just held sometime in the spring. He had been moving toward it the way he moved toward all his goals, gradually, with patience, with enough specific detail to make it feel real. He had not accounted for Yvonne finding out. He had not accounted for Yvonne deciding to act with integrity the moment she did. He had not accounted for Diane. He sat on the edge of the hotel room and understood in the particular quiet of a room that belonged to no one that he had underestimated both women completely. He tried Yvonne at 10:30. The text did not deliver. He called, straight to a message saying the number was unavailable. He tried the dental office email he had used once, bounced with an out-of-office that gave him nothing. He tried LinkedIn. Her profile was visible, but she had removed his connection. He had no other way in. He had never given her his actual home address, and she had never asked for it because he had always come to her. He had thought of that as convenient. He understood now that it had been another form of control. His address in her possession would have been a door she could walk through. He had no door to walk through tonight. He sat in the hotel room with his phone in his hand and understood that Yvonne was not going to hear from him on her own terms. She had made that decision at the same time she made the decision to call Diane. He recognized it with the clarity of a man who had finally run out of moves. Yvonne Price had acted with more integrity in 48 hours than he had managed in 25 months. He set his phone face down on the hotel nightstand. Then he picked it back up and called his mother. Cheryl answered on the second ring. "Mom," Marcus said, "something has happened." "I know," Cheryl said. Marcus paused. "What do you mean you know?" "Diane called me, about an hour ago." Marcus was quiet. "She told me everything," Cheryl said. "She was very calm. She always is. Did you know? Marcus said. Before tonight, did you know about Yvonne? A silence. I had heard something about a year ago through someone at your company. I didn't know the details. I told myself it was gossip. I didn't ask you directly. I didn't tell Diane. Mom. I know, Cheryl said. I know what I should have done. I have been sitting with that for a year, and I will sit with it for longer. What do I do? Marcus said. Cheryl was quiet for a moment. You let Diane do what she needs to do, and you stop asking other people to manage the consequences of your choices. That's what you do. She said goodnight and hung up. Marcus sat in the hotel room with his phone in his hand, and no one left to call. The divorce proceedings had taken 6 months to reach the point of filing and a further 2 months to finalize. Diane's attorney had been thorough and exact. The house remained Diane's separate property, documented, untouchable. Marcus's pension was subject to a qualified domestic relations order. The marital portion was split. The joint accounts were divided. Marcus's attorney had suggested at one point that Marcus might contest the house. Diane's attorney had sent a single letter in response. The suggestion was not raised again. Marcus had attempted reconciliation once at month 3. He had appeared at the school, not inside, he knew better than that, and waited in the parking lot. Diane had walked to her car, seen him, and said, "You need to speak to my attorney." She had gotten in the car and driven away. He had called twice more that week. Her attorney handled the responses. 6 months after the folder arrived, Diane was sitting in her reading chair on a Saturday morning, the same chair, the same lamp, the same quiet house, with a cup of coffee she was actually drinking. She had learned in the 6 months since that Saturday night that she was better company for herself than she had always credited. The house was still, the morning was ordinary. She was fine. Her phone rang at 9:15. She looked at the screen. Cheryl Carter. She set down her coffee and answered. "I owe you an apology," Cheryl said. "No preamble, no how are you, straight to it." Diane respected that. "I heard something about Marcus and another woman approximately 14 months before you found out, through a colleague of his who mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to me. I did not know her name. I did not know the details. What I should have done was call you immediately. What I did instead was convince myself it was gossip, and then convince myself it was already over, and then convince myself it was not my place." "It was your place," Diane said. "You knew I was living inside a lie. That made it your place." "Yes," Cheryl said, "it did. I was wrong. I chose my son over the truth, and I chose badly, and I am sorry." Diane was quiet for a long moment. "I believe you," Diane said, "and I want you to know that what you did and what Marcus did are not the same thing. What Marcus did was deliberate and sustained and calculated. What you did was a failure of courage. Those are different categories. I'm not going to treat them the same." Cheryl was quiet for a long moment. "How is Damon?" Cheryl asked. "He's coming home this weekend," Diane said. "He's doing well. He's going to be fine." "And you?" Cheryl said. "I'm already fine. I've been fine. I just had some work to do first." Damon arrived Saturday afternoon. He was different from the son who had driven up 6 months ago. Not older exactly, but settled in himself in the way that young men sometimes settle in the first year of real adult life. He had his mother's posture and his mother's way of looking directly at a person when they spoke. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table, with coffee and the remains of the dinner Diane had made, and talked for 2 hours about nothing in particular: his job, her school, a teacher she was thinking of recommending for department head, a neighborhood in Charlotte he was considering moving to. At one point, Damon looked at the kitchen counter where the ring had been. The counter was clear. She had moved the ring to a drawer 3 months ago. She did not throw it away. She did not know yet what she would do with it eventually. The drawer was fine for now. Diane did not say anything about the counter. He looked at it and then looked back at his mother and said, "You want more coffee?" "Yes," Diane said. He got up and made it, and they kept talking.
The divorce was finalized on a Thursday morning in the same month that Diane's school held its fall awards ceremony. She signed the documents at her attorney's office at 10 a.m. and was back at her desk by noon. She had 2 parent meetings that afternoon and a staff evaluation at 3:30. She completed all of them. The house was hers. It had always been hers. Her grandmother had left it to her. She had kept the documentation, and 17 years of marriage had not changed that. Her attorney had made it clean and fast. Marcus's pension was split by QDRO. The marital portion, 14 years of contributions, was divided. The joint accounts had been separated at month 3 on her attorney's guidance. There was nothing left to divide. Marcus had, in the end, signed everything without extended contest. Diane's attorney attributed this to the weight of the documentation Diane had assembled. Diane attributed it to a man who had known from the first conversation in that kitchen that he had no ground to stand on. She drove home that evening to her grandmother's house and stood in the hallway for a moment. Then she made dinner and called Damon to tell him it was done. Diane called Yvonne at month 9. She had thought about it for several weeks before she did. She was not calling to compare notes or to process anything further. She was calling because Yvonne Price had done something genuinely courageous at a moment when the easier thing would have been to disappear quietly, and Diane had not said that to her face. They met at a coffee shop on the west side of Atlanta on a Saturday morning. Yvonne was already there when Diane arrived. Diane recognized her from the LinkedIn profile photo. Yvonne stood up. They shook hands. They sat down. "I want to thank you," Diane said. "What you did took courage. You could have walked away and let the lie continue. You didn't. That choice cost you something, and it gave me something I needed. I wanted to say that in person." Yvonne was quiet for a moment. "I need you to know I had no idea he was married. Not until Tasha found that photo. Everything he told me." "I know," Diane said. "I read every message. I know exactly what he told you, and I know you believed it because he was very specific and very consistent. That is not a failure of your judgment. That is a failure of his character." They sat with their coffee for an hour. They did not become friends that morning. That was not what either of them needed. What they needed was to sit across from each other in the same room and establish, plainly, that neither of them was responsible for what Marcus Carter had done, and that both of them had handled it with more dignity than he had deserved. Diane picked up the check. Yvonne did not argue. They shook hands again outside and went in separate directions. It was enough. 1 year after the folder arrived, Diane Carter was at her school desk at 7 a.m. Same desk, same time, same discipline she had kept since her first year as a teacher, maintained through everything that had happened in between. Different life. She had not started dating. She was not ready, and she did not force it. She had learned in the past year that she was better company for herself than she had always given herself credit for. She had her grandmother's house and her school, and Damon calling on Sundays, and a life that was entirely, precisely hers. The wedding ring was still in the drawer. She was not ready to decide what to do with it, and the drawer was not hurting anyone. At 7:15, her assistant principal knocked and opened the door with the first issue of the morning. A scheduling conflict, 2 teachers, easy to resolve. Diane listened, asked 2 questions, gave a clear direction. The assistant principal nodded and left. Diane turned back to her desk. She had a full day. She was ready for it. Marcus Carter spent 25 months maintaining 2 lives with the precision of a man who had thought through every variable. 2 schedules, 2 promises, 2 women who believed him completely, because he was specific, and specific men are the hardest kind to catch. He had a date in his mind. He had a plan.
The only thing he did not account for was Yvonne Price deciding the moment she knew the truth that she was not going to protect him for a single day longer. She sent everything, and Diane Carter sat in her grandmother's reading chair until 4 in the morning and read every word. She went to work the next day. She verified. She called her attorney. She called her son. She sat Marcus down at the kitchen table and placed 12 pages in front of him, one at a time, until he had nothing left to say. She did not raise her voice once. She did not need to. The house is still hers. The school is still hers. The reading chair is still hers. Everything that was hers before Marcus walked through the door is still hers. That is what this channel is about. Subscribe to Shattered Crown Stories TV, a new story every single day. Justice is always served here.